Today we're going to talk about questions, negatives, and the verb estar. First of all, how do you form a question? There could be questions that are yes or no questions, like do you speak English, or questions that ask for specific information, such as where do you live? In Spanish, there are three ways to form a question. So if we want to know, does Miguel speak English? The first way we could ask that is we could repeat the statement, but raise our voice at the end of the sentence. So if the phrase is Miguel habla inglés, in order to ask that as a question, you would simply say, Miguel habla inglés? The second way to ask a question is to invert the subject and the verb. So if the phrase is Miguel habla inglés, the question would be, ¿Habla Miguel inglés? And again, you would raise your voice at the end of the sentence so that the person listening to you would know that you're asking a question. The third way would be to simply repeat the statement followed by a tag. So the statement again is Miguel habla inglés. A tag is something that you just have to memorize a couple different tags. In English, we actually have several tags that are much more complicated than the tags in Spanish. The tags in Spanish that we're going to learn today are verdad, which means is that the truth? No, or no es cierto, is that not true? So you would just have to memorize these tags. Some examples of tags in English would be aren't you? Isn't he? Didn't you? Doesn't she? Right? So we have a ton of different tags in English that make sense to you, but they would be tricky for someone learning English. So in Spanish, we're just going to focus on these few tags. ¿Verdad? No. No es cierto. Those are the three ways that you could form a question in Spanish. Here are some words that you'd like to know for forming questions. So interrogative words. ¿Qué? ¿Quién? ¿Quiénes? ¿Cuál? ¿Cuáles? ¿Cuándo? ¿Cuánto? ¿Cuánta? ¿Cuántos? ¿Cuántas? ¿Dónde? ¿Cómo? ¿Por qué? So something to note on here, for quién and cuál, as you can see, there's a singular version and a plural version. So you can use a singular or a plural depending on which phrase you're using. Another thing to note is for the word cuánto, you would have to think about gender as well as singular versus plural because there are 4 different forms to ask it. So for how much or how many, you would have to look at what you're talking about and try and match it up and make it agree. Something else important. So many of you probably already know the word que, which means what in Spanish. However, if you didn't hear someone correctly or you don't understand and you want to say what, it's much more polite to use the word como. So if you didn't hear something again or you want to have someone repeat it or explain it more, it's much more polite to say como. They would understand you if you said que, but if you want to speak a little bit more formally and more polite, you would say como.